So with Arcane just around the corner, as a Jinx main, I thought I'd make a Jinx guide considering there's going to be a lot more new players out there. If you're a new player, this is your guide. This is how to play Jinx, the basic fundamentals that will get you to around the gold level. And although you might be gold, it's good to know the fundamentals of this champ, as if you're planning to play her long term, you're going to want to know how to play her and improve on the fundamentals that are taught in this video. However, if you finish this video and you want to learn some more in-depth things, there'll be videos on my channel covering all sorts of things, from starting items to secondary rune choices to matchups, all sorts of Jinx knowledge that you need to know, as well as more in-depth guides on things such as positioning, which I'll cover briefly in this video. So let's get right into it and quickly cover Jinx's abilities. So first up, we have Jinx's passive, which is Get Excited. So this is a really key ability to how you play Jinx. So this ability gives you 25% attack speed and a huge 175% movement speed steroid for 6 seconds. And also crucially, it lets you go past the attack speed cap, which is 2.5. So this ability procs on kills, towers, and epic monsters, so things like Drakes, Elders, Barons, and is refreshed after each. Again, this will make you crazy strong, but I'll cover it in a different video and you'll kind of start to pick up on how it's used as to play Jinx and briefly touch on it later on in this video. So Jinx Q is Switcheroo. This is your bread and butter, or Jinx would say bombs and bullets, right? Literally bombs and bullets. It swaps between rocket launcher and minigun, each of them having their own benefit. Rocket form allows you to extend your range whilst also dealing 110% AD per shot. So this also deals splash damage, which is really good for team fights. If you get an assist, like even if you don't target the champion, if you get a like splash damage sort of assist with Runans, you're going to proc your passive and go crazy in the team fight. And minigun form, basically you just stack it up 3 times after 3 autos and it gives you a bunch of attack speed. Not too much to this ability. It's a shorter range and you just want to use it when you get close up for the attack speed steroid. It does do more DPS, but it's also riskier than rocket form. So that's kind of the balance you have to consider. And that goes further towards mastery of this ability, knowing when to switch to rocket form and when to be in minigun form. But for complete beginners, you just kind of want to start out the fight in rocket form, stay at range, play safe, and then if you feel the opportunity is there, use minigun form to do more DPS once you hit your passive. So Jinx's W Zap is really straightforward ability, shoots in a line, deals damage, and slows the enemy. Just a quick thing to note, this ability does actually scale really well with AD. It's 160% bonus AD, and in the advanced guides, I'll cover like things you can kind of do with this and experiment out with. I personally have found out that building like huge AD items such as Man Immune are actually really good for Jinx W and rockets. However, this is like a very niche scenario. Normally you go Man Immune when you go lethality Jinx, which is kind of a subgenre of itself. For complete beginners, just ignore this part of the video. I'll cover this more in the itemization guide. So Jinx's E is Flame Chompers. She throws out 3 traps, and when stepped on by enemies, they're rooted. There is a weird kind of cast time with this, so you need to be ready to like wait like I think it's like a quarter of a second before they actually activate. So these are kind of good for follow-up CC or forcing your enemy to walk that takes longer to get to you, so you can kind of force them into a bad position and you can position better yourself. So Jinx's R is Super Mega Death Rocket. It really does what it says on the tin, like most of Jinx's abilities. It is a global rocket, deals more damage the further it travels, and 25% of missing HP. This is really good for sniping enemies under towers or in recall spots that are normally common. Can also be used in team fights to execute enemies that you can't exactly hit and be safe, which then allows you to proc your passive and go crazy in a team fight. This used to be really good for sniping objectives. It can still be used to snipe objectives and chunk them if you're maybe junglers looking to smite it earlier, but most likely it's going to be the enemy jungler fucking up more than like you making a play. This always was the case, but beforehand the jungler had to like block it to stop it from hitting the objective, because if it hit the objective it deals a lot of damage, right? It deals 25% missing HP, which on a Baron is a lot of damage, right? So that's Jinx's abilities kind of covered. They're really not the most complex abilities in the game, but how you use them still matters. Your passive is the key to winning most fights, right? Like once you proc it, you're just a death turret on wheelies, 175% movement speed, 25% attack speed, and it reprocs, which is just nuts. It's really the most important part of her abilities, to be honest, in my opinion, especially because it lets you dip in and out of team fights where you're on the range of like a lethal ability like a Leona ult, right? But it's never quite in range of you because you're spacing so well. And let's say Leona does throw out her R in that scenario, you have so much movement speed that it's so easy to dodge. Her passive really is what opens up like more mechanical prowess, I'd say. This paired with good Q usage is what's going to make you look crazy on Jinx. Swapping between that long range rocket form and transitioning into just a crazy attack speed cracked up girl with a minigun, right? You're just going to shred through everyone. However, the last thing I'm going to cover in this guide is positioning. Positioning is the most important part of Jinx and every single ADC there is. Well, I say every ADC, apart from those fucking weirdos who play Swain bot, I'm still pissed off. Anyway, positioning is important for every single ADC and it really determines how good you kind of are as an ADC player. Like ADCs have got range and they're squishy as fuck, right? So you need to be positioning well to not die. So you may be asking, what does good positioning look like? Well, not one of my VODs. However, good positioning looks like something where you can focus key priority targets and not die to key lethal threats. So positions where nobody can reach you and you can attack them. So if the enemy have no ability to get over a wall, standing over a wall like on a Krugs, or if you're fighting around red buff or something like that is really good positioning, because it takes them to have to walk around the wall. You're in a good position and you're not too far from your team normally, right? If you're fighting for a red buff or like around the red buff area. So I've got a clip here. My positioning is not actually that great in this, and I don't play that well, mainly because I'm scared at this point. Like I'm scared of dying at this point in the game. So the only reason I play this well is because I always have my way out until I'm ready to press the trigger and just go all in. You can kind of probably see by my positioning in this clip that I'm scared of where Lux is. You can see here I swap from rocket form to minigun form to hit the Darius. As he's coming up, I just walk away. I can't risk going into any sort of range of him right now. And if I start kiting here, it's going to put me in that range, right? So that's why I actually don't kite back here. Like I simply just wait for my Alistair to go in and CC him, and then I turn. As you can see, I completely play this like a donkey. I miss my W and my ult. I really thought he'd walk up where Veigar is because Veigar could cage better. So you can see I'm very aware of Sejuani here at this point as well, but Darius is walking back in and I think I could get some pop shots with my rockets onto him. So at this point, I dodged the Sejuani CC and basically they have no CC left in this fight. Unless there's a Lux here, that's what I was scared of. However, they are all hard focusing my Alistair, which is really dumb of them. I heal him to buy some time and I just keep autoing, right? And I always have my way out here. So if Lux turns up, I'm fine to just flash out. However, they've kind of fucked up at this point. They're taking a lot of damage and they're both very low. So I'm going to get my passive off of one of them and then just proceed to shred the rest of them down, right? So overall, this is actually a pretty bad fight for me. I missed my W at the start onto Darius. I missed my ult onto Darius. Like I hit Veigar, but it didn't do a lot of damage. But overall, because my positioning was pretty good and I always had my way out, I just thought I'd include it here because this is like a normal fight for me. Like there's nothing crazy going on. You just have to position well and basically just deal a lot of fucking damage with your rockets and minigun. W usage is actually kind of important. Getting the slow off on your W is actually very, very important. Being able to start the slow onto someone can really help like supports, etc., to follow up the CC and stun them. It's a really important ability. You want to be using it before fights even start to get some chip damage, and even the slow can engage a fight really. Like that slow onto a key target like an AD carry or a control mage can just really fuck up their day. But yeah, let's very briefly touch on runes and items for basic beginners. So a generic Jinx build is going to look something like Kraken, boots, runans, i.e. then situational items like Lord Dominic's Regards or Bloodthirster, or like Lord Dominic's Regard GA or GA Bloodthirster, things like that. The first four items are kind of the same, but I'll cover more on this in the itemization guide. Runes are pretty simple. You want to run Lethal Tempo, Presence of Mind, Bloodline, or Alacrity. Alacrity can be good sometimes. And then finally, Coup de Grace or Cut Down. So secondary runes are a bit more complex on Jinx. At the moment, you kind of just want to run Biscuits and Cosmic. It's the best in most situations for beginners. Once again, though, this will be more covered in the itemization guide. But the main thing to remember is cut down if they have a lot of HP tanks. But yeah, thank you all for watching. If you sat through this whole thing, just comment something fucking random in the comments, like, I don't know, avocado. I'd appreciate to know who actually sat through the whole thing and watched it all. Yeah, also leave stuff in the comment sections if you're a Jinx player. If you're a higher elo Jinx player than me, please fucking coach me. Or, you know, just higher elo in general, you know, I'm looking to improve at the moment. But yeah, hopefully I can spread some of this knowledge that I've kind of picked up from having nearly 500 Jinx games, unfortunately. The other guides will be a bit more in depth on things that I've picked up, like itemization, more on positioning. There will be a whole dedicated positioning guide and a whole dedicated laning phase guide, because I think laning phase is the most important part of the actual like macro of the game for Jinx. I think all AD carries though in general, getting ahead in laning phase at the moment in solo queue is just the best way to go about things. The rest of the game doesn't really matter too much in my opinion. As long as you're ahead and you consistently keep up your farm and just position well in fights, you should be winning most games unless it's a massive team diff, right? Obviously there will be macro for mid game and late game, which I'll cover in another guide, but laning phase is the most important one. Anyway, if you're looking for another video to watch, I'd recommend going over to the itemization guide, and because it'll be short, and then onto the laning phase guide to, you know, part one of the game, and then mid game, late game, etc. And you can pick up whatever guides you want from that point. But yeah, like, subscribe, comment, and if you're a real gangster, come over to my Twitch. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next guide, hopefully.